everybody. Randy Patterson again here with Boomerosity. Remember when we were teenagers and we listened to the radio every chance we could, whether it was in our room or in our cars or out with friends, whatever the case may be? Seems like the airways back then was dominated by the band Kansas. Now, I wish I could say that I was one of those cool ones that got their first album and was a fan from day one. But I got to be honest with you, I wasn't. I wasn't that cool. But I do remember the album cover, that photograph of that famous painting in the capital of Kansas, and that was the album cover. And it's the name of the band, Kansas. It said it all. It represented everything. It wasn't until 1976 when Left Overture came out and that great song, Carry On Wayward Son, came out. It seemed like from then on, Kansas was always on the radio, always from that album on. When it went from that album to Point of No Return and that title cut, as well as Dust in the Wind, it just seems like Kansas has been on the radio ever since. And that's the reason why they have the huge following that they have, well over 15 million albums sold. And it's also hard to believe that from that first album, they had only been out as a band for a year. So they were founded in 1973. And believe it or not, folks, baby boomers, that was 50 years ago. Kansas has been a band for 50 years. And to celebrate that, they're going on a big old tour this year, but they've also released a new album called Another Fork in the Road. And it's a kind of a best of album, but really what it is, and you'll hear this in the interview you're about to continue listening to, I hope. Rich Williams says that these are deep cuts, essentially, that big, long-time hardcore Kansas fans will know and remember and love. Some of them have been re-recorded, but it's going to be one of those albums. I've got to listen to it. It's phenomenal. You're going to want it. And you're going to want to catch Kansas on tour. They've got a big, extensive tour coming up, and it's going to be a great opportunity to hear the hits that we know and some of those deeper cuts that we may have forgot about, especially as they're represented in Another Fork in the Road. This conversation with co-founder and guitarist Rich Williams is amazing. Very laid back, as all my interviews are. He's got his phone held up and he's walking around his house. We see some of his guitars in the background and just very easygoing. You're going to feel like you're right there with me in this interview. And I hope you do feel that way in all of the interviews. But Rich is a wonderful guy, very open, very humble, confident, but humble. And he's very appreciative of what has been bestowed on him in the band. And he shares a lot of that in our conversation. So please listen to it from beginning to end. After it's all done, share it with your friends. Be sure and pick up the album, Another Fork in the Road, if you haven't already. And be sure to catch one of those shows on the Kansas tour. So without any further ado, here is my first interview with Kansas's Rich Williams. Until next time, this is Randy Patterson with Boomerosity. Take care. How you doing?
Doing great.
Good deal. It's where are you dialing in from?
My wife and I live up in the mountains in North Carolina. During COVID, we were based out of Atlanta, and we had a second home, just a condo outside of Boone, North Carolina.
Ah.
And we were spending a week here, a week there, a week here, a week there, until it's months and months and months, and now years have gone by. And we thought, what are we doing? I don't know if we're ever going to go back to work again.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows what the new normal is going to be?
Right.
And we don't want to be stuck in Atlanta. The riots got a little close.
Well, the traffic can make you stuck there. So,
I mean, we have Boone is 15 miles from here. Then there's one traffic light that we complain about, but it's better than any traffic light in Atlanta. And so we're up here in the peace and quiet of the mountains. I'm sitting here in my guitar room this morning, where I do all these from, and it's a little home studio. I've got all my guitars behind me, all my amps, everything, and look out the window and watch deer, turkey, bear, whatever, walk by the front window. It's we're on the side of a mountain, and we have a lot of room, and it's a gated community, so it's very safe and private. And I'm king of the mountain. There's only 10 or 11 full-time residences up here, but there's 221 homes.
Now, where is Boone closest to? Next big town?
We are 15 miles southwest of Boone. I mean, we're 35 minutes from Johnson City. We're probably 8 miles from the Tennessee border.
Okay, gotcha. No, right where you're at then.
It's cold up here, and they're going to start Sugar Mountain. They're making snow as fast as they can right now, and weekends can get pretty crowded up here.
I can imagine. Yeah.
So we just plan on staying where we are because we don't get any traffic where we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just don't try to go to town.
There you go. Stock up ahead of time, right?
Yeah. I'm out enough when we're on the road. And I spent my whole life until about 13 years ago doing everything, drinking every bar dry I was ever in. Just all of that. I've done that, and I don't want to ever do it again.
There you go.
And so my wife and I just prefer the solitude of what's up here. And waking up every day to this is just awesome.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's how I feel where I live. So I'm happy for you, man. You've earned it. And before I forget, in case I get beside myself later on in the interview, I just want to thank you and the band for 50 years of phenomenal music and being a big part of the soundtrack of at least of my life. And I know, baby boomers everywhere feel the same way. So thank you and the band for all of that, man. I know it's been a lot of sacrifice, but I hope the rewards have been very, very large for you all.
It's funny. I'm going to move this slightly.
Okay. There you go. Love it.
My guitar room, except I've got a bunch of guitars in that closet, about 80 or 18 guitars in there, and they're all over the house. My wife indulges me. I understand the motivation behind people thanking me for our endurance and all that. When somebody says a sacrifice is doing something you don't want to do it, but you do it anyway because it's for the right cause or the right reason. This is not a sacrifice. This is the greatest job in the world, and I'm very grateful to have it. And so I feel a little guilty when somebody puts the sacrifice moniker on it because I wouldn't have it any other way. Mm-hmm. Of course, the travel can suck sometimes, and there's the ups and downs with the music business. There's the people come and people go over the years. But I signed up a long time ago for all of that, the entire experience of being in a band, the good, bad, ugly, and just the tenacity to keep doing it anyway. Because this is the only thing I've ever wanted to do. And so it is no sacrifice to live your chosen life. It's just a blast. So why me? Why am I so lucky? But again, you make your own luck by just simply doing.
Yeah. Well, you guys, I just rewatched the documentary on you guys, and you all have, there was always that push to be able to be at your top level best, to strive for excellence. There was no such thing ever that I saw in the documentary, and it's certainly not on your albums, that you guys were just mailing it in and resting on your laurels. There was always this just keeping it on the edge to do your level best at all times and take it to a new level each time. And that, fans pick up on that, Rich. And sometimes, there's even with our favorite bands, you could see where somebody just kind of didn't really their heart wasn't in it, and you feel like you've been a little robbed when you pick up that album or that CD or go to that concert. And you guys always, it shows, it's evident that no matter what's going on in your life, you guys were always doing your best, and fans appreciate that. And I think so, even if it was not a sacrifice, the level of effort that you guys did is much appreciated. So for that, thank you.
Oh, absolutely. It's there are always times when it's like, oh man, I don't know if I want to do this today. But the curtains open and the lights go down, and all that goes away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it all goes back down to you might not feeling well, the travel. Maybe it's not the greatest venue, or maybe it's a small house. Show didn't do well, whatever. But once it starts, I've never mailed one in. It's somewhere between fear and pride. I don't care if there's one person there or 100,000. I just don't want to show my ass. I don't want to make it appear like for this one person, I don't care.
Right.
And so I just attribute that, I guess, to my Midwestern upbringing of you make a commitment, you stick to it, and you follow it through.
Well, it shows, man, and that I think that's class all the way. I'll brag on your former bandmate for a moment too, to kind of tap on to what you just said and how you guys feel about fans. A few years ago, I was putting together the 30th anniversary of my high school reunion, and I tracked down Kerry and shot him a note and said, "Hey, and this was for his one of his solo albums. Said, giving away things at the class reunion. Your band was a big part of our soundtrack. Could I get a signed CD to give away during the reunion?" And he was, there was no emails back or anything. It was just one day I got a package, and it was one of Kerry's albums that are CDs that he signed. And that's a reflection on the whole band. I know it was a solo piece, but watching the documentary again, like I've said, it just shows where your guys' hearts are. And it reflects in the music, reflects in your shows. I've not seen you in concert, but I know you're coming back here next year. I'm not going to miss that one. So you'll be in Knoxville, which is my backyard. So
It's going to be a great show. I just got off the phone with Phil, and we're starting to put together what the show is going to be. With the 50th anniversary, another fork in the road release date today, actually. We want to represent that. And so, there's stuff that we have to play. But other than that, there's a whole lot of stuff we haven't played in a very long time that represents the journey we've been on, and songs that we haven't played in a long time, and just going, oh, I mean, the one song in particular that fans have been dying to hear forever. We're finally going to add that. And it's very exciting for me to start putting together this list. And so it's going to be different than the other tour we've done, in that going to make an effort to represent every era of this band. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of work to put it all together. I mean, I'll be relearning songs that I haven't played in 30, 40 years at times. So I'll be picking up the needle and what did I play there? And I've got to relearn a lot of parts. It's funny though how muscle memory from decades ago will come back. You're trying to figure this out, and all of a sudden your muscle memory will remember the position on the neck and how you were doing it. I'll say, oh, there it is. It's the brain is a crazy thing.
Yep.
Or I will discover, why did I play it this way? It's so much easier this way. And so I relearn it, but I've modified it to the correct position on the neck of playing it. A lot of times you're in the studio, play this part, and you're just learning the notes, and you struggle through it. And then you kind of stick with those positions. but you can now go back and actually play it in a more correct mode. So all of it's fun, and it's going to be very exciting to do.
So you mentioned about how muscle memory brings you back to the way things were, in playing. How is touring different for you? And especially now in a post-pandemic world, what has changed about touring that for the better or for worse?
Well, it's getting back to normal. When we started earlier this year, you're kind of sneaking around and peeking around the corners, and everybody's masked up. Backstage is a ghost town. No guests. I mean, my wife travels with me, and we had to make her an official member of the crew because she helps me a lot, just to get her on the manifest so they'd let her in the back door.
Wow.
Those things are easing up now, and so it's getting back to normal. But still, there's a lot of precautions. There are still variants that are going around, and it's unknown what's going to happen in the future. So everybody has to be very diligent. Us personally, I go to a clinic down in Florida, to where I get stem cell work done. I get all sorts of bioidentical vitamins done. I get infusions done I've had all my shots. Just doing all these things. I'm seeing a personal trainer, doing everything I can to assure that when we get back on the road, I've done everything I can to remain healthy. And that's part of the new world. Mm-hmm. Although there's nothing wrong with that. That's good for me.
Right. Well, we want you around for a lot longer, so we're glad to hear that. So, 50 years that you guys have been hammering at this. Do you think it's going to work out?
I mean, we've got our foot in the door, I think.
I think so. Tell me about this new album. I mean, this is phenomenal. I was glad to hear that you guys were coming out with it, and I've heard a cut or two, but tell fans about the album and what they can expect from it when it hits today, or since it is hitting today.
Well, we were on the road, very busy last year, and Thomas Weber with Inside Out really wanted this project. And when you get a record company guy, and he is our biggest fan, and it's a fantastic company, we're not going to tie his hands behind his back. Yes, Thomas, what do you want to do? His approach to this was unique in the fact that he wanted to go at this from a fan perspective, because he was a big Kansas fan before we were with his label. And he said, let me try to put this together from more of a fan standpoint than you guys doing it as another best of, which would have been our default. And that's not what we really wanted to do, but that's kind of how it would come out. So we handed him and Jeff Wagner the ball and said, you guys put the album together. And so they did. They curated all this material. And of course, in doing that, there's so much work involved in licensing and, what you can get in Europe and you can't get in the States, and just on and on forever. A lot of legwork. And then we had final say on, there was a few songs that we changed out. But they pretty much put this package together. The same was with the idea for the cover. They came up with the initial concept, and then Phil and I made changes in it. What we thought was missing, what we thought needed to be added or subtracted. But the nucleus of that and the thought behind it was them. The liner notes, the approach to it, the interviews in it, all that was their suggestion. And so we had as much involvement in it as we could, being on the road at the time. But I have to give most of the credit to Inside Out for assembling this. in doing things like this in the past, record companies always want, you know, another cut, something new, something whatever.
Right.
Well, we have a few songs in the can for a new album, maybe next year. We didn't want to use that on this. So we thought, what song brought us here? We did a demo tape 1,000 years ago, and the song Can I Tell You was on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the song that Don Kirshner liked. And that got our foot in the door with Don Kirshner. We signed a record deal, or we didn't sign it, but we had the offer. And then we got Kerry Livgren to join. And because we needed another songwriter, signed the deal with Don, all on because of Can I Tell You?
Wow.
And Wally Gold, who was his right-hand man and a producer, he walked right up to Robbie and said, "You are the reason I'm here." They loved the violin there. And so we thought, what better song to bookend this project than to do a re-record with a current band? And let's see if we can do this, because we are all over the country. I'm now up here. Tom Brislin lives in New Jersey. Billy lives in Savannah. Phil's down in Jonesboro, Georgia. So let's try to do this in a remote fashion. Chad Singer, our engineer, front house engineer, is a Berkeley grad in sound design, and we'll have him, put it all together. He knows what we sound like more than anybody. And so I recorded my parts right here in this room where I'm sitting. Tom Brislin's a genius keyboard player, and he's also very technically savvy. So he was in charge of assembling all of this. Ronnie Platt did his vocals in his bathroom in Chicago. And Phil went to the studio we used in Atlanta, Georgia, and cut the drum tracks. So we did this in that fashion, passing parts around and wanting to do honor to that song in kind of reproducing it, but with the current lineup. And that was the special thing we wanted to add to this record. And, it's funny. It's just the other day, my wife had it playing softly in the background. And I was going, which version is this? I couldn't tell because it was low enough level. And it wasn't until I got to my guitar solo, the first solo, that I knew it was the new version, because I play a different solo. But it was like, is that Steve singing? Is that Ronnie singing? It sounded just like the original. And that was, I think, our approach to it. And I think we did a good job on nailing that.
When you look at this project, how does it hit you emotionally because of that span of time? Because, I mean, you reached back to that demo cut and all that. And I mean, and for me, it's kind of easy for me to pinpoint where you're talking about, having just rewatched the documentary and with Kirshner and all that kind of thing. But is there anything about this project that, when you think about it now, after working on it and all the input you've had on it, is there anything in particular that kind of hits you at an emotional level about all this?
Not as much as you would think, because we keep taking this next step forward, one day at a time, like the drunks do. And all of a sudden you arrive at this point. And it's really just in looking backwards and going, holy crap, this has really been a long walk to get to here. And 50 is a number, but there's something about, half a friggin' century. It's kind of hard to believe, really. And in a timeline, it seems like it started yesterday. And then on the other note, it seems like it happened 100 years ago. So it's parallel different thoughts on the same subject. So it's really, I'm kind of in awe of not me, but I'm in awe of what we and all of the we's, of all the people that have been involved in all of this, of what we have accomplished. And that's a little bit overwhelming to me. because we don't look at ourselves in a, yeah, that's right, I'm Richard Williams from Kansas. That never doesn't cross my mind. And even John Elefante, when he was in the band, after he had left, he was doing an interview. And the interviewer asked him, he said, well, what was it like being in Kansas? And it was a very amazing answer he had. It was so accurate. He just said, those guys never knew how big they were. And I thought, wow, that is a dead on balls accurate insight, because we still don't. It's not really a thought. It's just, again, I wake up, put on, get dressed, and I come into the guitar room and just kind of do stuff. And then we talk and we make plans, and okay, here's what's this. And it's just a very workmanship, day-to-day little steps towards the next goal. And you just keep on that path. And suddenly here we are, post-pandemic, and still, last year was one of the best years we've ever had.
Yeah.
And I think this year, with this 50th, just seeing the buildings that we're going to be playing on this tour date, this is really going to be the cream of the crop. It's going to be a tremendous tour. I still have to pinch myself that just, some tubby redhead from Topeka, Kansas, that really wasn't good at school or anything else, is 50 years later, and this worldwide known band that gets to play guitar for them. I don't know if I'll ever wrap my mind around how big that is.
Well, you were talking about what you do every day. Do you attribute that to, I mean, the people on both coasts kind of refer to Kansas. I've been to Kansas a couple of times. Believe it or not, I worked for a couple of months in Leavenworth when I was in the telecommunications business. And that was a funny story. I went there from Phoenix, Arizona in February of '86. So imagine the culture shock for me. But yeah, and I saw your hand motion there of flyover country is
bingo.
Yeah. So, but being in that area, and especially a lot of farming and such, there's just that stick-to-itiveness. There's not a lot of bump in the horizon. It's just a steady as you go type of approach to things when it comes to farming. Do you feel like your upbringing kind of instilled that in you into this kind of work?
I think what was instilled in us was just a work ethic. You commit to something and you follow it through. My dad was a sergeant in the Army with the Normandy invasion. Phil's dad was in the Air Force, similar type of thing. He had a job before and returned to that job afterwards. He married my mother, who was a war bride. They were married their entire lives. Everything, and he retired from the same company he was with since before the war. Everything about Midwest life was about simply committing to something and following it through. And it's like people will, like the farming connotation and all that. The only thing I ever did on the farm was go to the farmer's house to see if I could go fishing on his farm pond. I mean, we were members of a country club. My dad ran Ryder Truck Rental, and I had a very upper mid class beaver cleaver childhood. But I was taught, and not so much by word, but by example, commitment and following through. And that we kind of all were. So that was just in our nature. And we were very proud of where we came from. And how could a band like this come from the middle of nowhere? I don't know, beyond the edge of the frontier. Well, we had radio stations and everything, and they played the same music they were playing on the coast. It was an extremely musical place. Before the British invasion, there was numerous, like 10-piece soul bands, Blue-Eyed Soul, that were traveling all over the Midwest that were really good, all dressed in matching tuxes, a big horn section and playing, all the soul music and stuff. Those were our heroes. And always wished one day to be in a band roving across the Midwest, getting played the Hollyhock Ballroom in Hatfield, Minnesota and stuff. It seemed so far away. And our biggest dream was to write material and maybe get to record it once. If we could have an album, that was the pinnacle dream.
One album.
Right, the first album. We from where we came from, we couldn't possibly imagine anything beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
And to break out into the national and international music scene and have gold, platinum records in a 50-year career, none of that. We had reached our goal when we recorded the first album.
Wow.
And so it's pretty easy to just, since that first album, it's been 49 years of Gravy Train. It really is. Well, and I don't forget that. I go to YouTube and all this and watch these 8-year-old guitar players that play circles around me now that I could practice the rest of my life 10 hours a day and not touch them. I know that there is 100,000, 500,000 guitar players out there much better than me that would take my place in a second. So I don't forget that. I'm very fortunate, but it's what I bring something else to the table that has kept me here. And I understand that too.
Yeah. Well, I think that if you hadn't done what you did, those kids wouldn't be doing what they are doing today. And one of my first interviews was with Sam Andrew of Big Brother and the Holding Company. And he had told me then, he's passed a few years ago, but he told me then that he goes, Randy, keep in mind when we were doing this stuff, we were making it up. It hadn't been done yet. And now you have schools that crank out 500 kids a year that can do Hendrix better than Hendrix, So, but one thing had to happen before the other. And I think that's one of the reasons why I do what I do, Rich, is that I don't want people to forget. And I also want people to continue to appreciate what has been done and what you guys are still doing. I mean, the fact that you're still out there on the road, well, you don't have to. You can rest on your laurels, but there's that love of what you do. And, that keeps us loving what you do. And so, here you are 50 years later, still at the top of your game. When you come to Knoxville, I want a part of this to be in Everything Knoxville magazine for that month. And so to that point, I want to ask, what can Knoxville fans expect? Because you're going to be back at the Tennessee Theater. You recorded the one video there. It's, so you're no stranger to that beautiful theater, that beautiful venue.
I remember the walk from the hotel to the venue.
Yeah. What can fans expect? I know you and Phil are still putting this tour together as we're recording this in December of 2022, but to your mind right now, what can fans expect on this tour in 2023? And especially Knoxville fans that were there when you guys did that show before and recorded that video. What can we expect?
The important thing to expect, it's going to be a little bit longer show. Usually the classic set that we've been doing lately, it's an hour and a half. This is going to be a 2-hour show because we've got more important material to cover. And to expect, this is really going to be aimed at the long-time Kansas fan that has most of this catalog, and we want to perform things, to breathe fresh air into a song that nobody has played in 30 years. Songs that we've been, wanting to play, but didn't have the personnel involved that were into doing it, to go into that trouble. Bands can get into a rut of being a jukebox. And it's not something I've ever been comfortable with. But then you play in state fairs or casinos, and then those places don't want you to go into the deeper cuts. They want, come in with the hits and get out because we want the crowd to get into the casino and lose money.
Yeah.
And so we're going to concentrate more on songs that we feel are important to us in the evolution of Kansas, and songs that just haven't been done either ever or in a really long time. And songs, there's some songs that just we never played, but they just don't suit us live. There are other songs this would be so much better live than it was even in recording.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of parameters like that we're looking at. And then just the pacing. We don't want to overwhelm an audience with too many big, moody, bombastic, complicated Kansas songs in a row. You start to lose people. So we've got to pace it in a way to where people your ears need to breathe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we want to be careful of that, because after a while, it starts having a sameness and can get boring. And we've been aware of that for a long time. So it's just a lot of thought going into it. We're carrying all our own lights and stuff that will be revamped. The show's, it's going to look good. It's going to sound good. Great energy level. A lot of pride in the members of this band. We rehearse before the show an hour and a half every night. Have for the last 7 years probably. We always get in the dressing room. It's fun, and it's in the days of old, we would just show up, and noodle around a little bit, then go on stage cold. Now we go on stage, going through most of the material. Everybody's warmed up. If somebody's struggling with a part, we go over it, and on to the next thing. All vocals are warmed up, fingers are nimble, and we've already kind of gone through it all. So we walk out on stage with a confidence. We're ready to go. And so that's the new mindset in the last 8 years now has been, we take this very seriously, but it has to be fun.
Yeah.
We have to keep this fun. And that's what we do. We've got a great crew, a great band, and a really outstanding camaraderie with all. And I mean, I haven't been off a month, and I miss everybody so much. And I see other people, almost getting weepy that they miss their road family.
Yeah.
And that hasn't happened in a long time. And it's just wonderful to be so eager to get back in the saddle with these guys.
Well, I was looking over your itinerary for next year, and man, I mean, you guys have been around a long time. That's a pretty aggressive and pretty comprehensive itinerary you have together. And, bands many years your junior would probably struggle to keep up with that. I mean, that's amazing.
I'm not sure what you saw, but there's a lot more to be added. We'll probably do in the neighborhood 80, 85 dates. Me and Phil discovered something quite a while ago. It was what we call Kansas mode. It's like in the olden days, you put out a record, then you go out on this big tour, and then 4 months later, it's just slammed shut. And now what do? What we do now is we have 2 rules. It has to be profitable and it has to be fun. And we have to keep everybody happy. Traveling on a bus for us, in my opinion, is a nightmare. You get on a bus, they're very expensive. Off days, you got to put people in hotels. You're not making money on off days. You got to get per diem. You're paying the overhead of a bus every night. You can not work for a week. Bus costs the same. Gas prices are ridiculous. We said no more of that. We play Friday, we play Saturday, we go home, and we do that all year. We all have families. We all have home lives. And all of that. And so it gives us a good balance. Our crew loves this schedule. The band loves this schedule. And so every week you've got something to practice for. Okay, I've got to get back to my room and practice a couple hours every morning, and it keeps you fresh. Somebody gets sick, they can get well before the next weekend, rather than riding around in a tube. This is just a rolling incubator that gets everybody sick. We've discovered a way to make this continue, and in a very fun, exciting way.
Well, I think that hitting it like you are too. I mean, let's face it, fans like me, you know, if you're hitting a show for 2 hours on a weeknight, and you know, some of us still work the next day, and we don't party every night like we used to back in our teens and 20s. For you guys to do it and accommodate your crowd, I mean, that's smart too, because if it's a Friday night, we can go and listen to 2.5 hours of music and not worry about having to get up for work the next day, you know? So it's brilliant. What have you guys haven't done that you still want to do? I mean, surely there's something in 50 years of this career that you guys are still thinking, all right, we want to do this now. Anything like that?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I'm going to think about that, because what haven't we done? We've traveled a lot of places. I've never been to Australia, but I don't really know if I want to deal with that flight.
Yeah, killer.
I would love to go back to Europe if things could normalize over there. We've had to cancel 2 European tours in the last 3 years, you know, COVID. And actually, this summer, we were supposed to be going back. And while things were opening up here, it was hit or miss over there. I know Dream Theater had gone, and there were so many struggles, you know, working in Europe. And, you know, people were still afraid to go to shows. Promoters were taking gigantic baths. And we like to maintain relationships with promoters. I hate it when a promoter loses money.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you feel guilty, and so it's not optimal. I would love to go back to Europe, and you know, maybe in 24 we will. Maybe things will normalize over there. Again, the important things, you know, for me, I'm working on a new guitar rig. So that's the number one thing on my horizon is my 50th anniversary guitar rig. Next to that is just, you know, us working on new material to record something, you know, perhaps in 2024. Thomas at Inside Out, so anytime you guys want to put out a record today, next year, the year after, I'm here. I'm in full support. And so that is a goal. You know, so we still are. The past is great. You can look back at the past. Oh, I'm so proud of the past and all that. But really, this morning and what today brings and tomorrow brings and next year brings, that is where the focus is. And the one thing I can tell you is there is no planned end of that road.
Good.
I mean, I'm gonna do this until the day I can't. When I'm done, it's because either I fell over dead on stage or I just couldn't do it anymore. I'm going to leave it all on the field. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to just, I'm kind of tired of this. I don't want to do this. No, I have to do this.
Well, cool. Well, do it, but still take care of yourself. We want you healthy.
Well, I quit drinking 12 years ago, and quit smoking. One of the 2 of the best things I've ever done. You know, drugs, nah, not interested. Occasional Benadryl to help me sleep. That's my biggest vice.
Good. Well, earlier you were in your guitar room. I'm not a player, but I love guitars and the shapes and the history of them and all that. You said you had 1 or 2. Is there a holy grail of guitars in your mind, and do you own it, or is it something you wish you had?
Well, The honest answer I think for most guitar players is on a Holy Grail. The Holy Grail is tone.
Mm-hmm.
And what will help you achieve that? And I've gone through such an assortment of things over my life. Just ordered a new amp, which is going to be my next attempt at that Holy Grail. I love PRS guitars, and I keep going back between those, and it's a 2012 Leroy Cornell model Les Paul Gold Tops.
Mm.
Just for different applications. I've never been a Strat guy. I love the sound of them. I just hate the sound of them when I'm playing them. but that being said, I've got a 66 hanging on the wall that I'll play once in a while. I've got a really nice old Telecaster. But I've just your basic Les Paul type setup is what works for me best. And I'm trying different pickups and this and that. Trying to find the Holy Grail is like trying to juggle Jello in the sun. It's just, it slips through your fingers. And then I'll go back and listen to something I recorded 3 years prior, like on a live tape, and going, that sounds great. What have I done differently? Yeah. And so you're constantly either trying to recreate or find. And I think that is the Achilles heel of a guitar player. But it's the journey that matters. You're on this constant journey of the tone you're hearing in your head that your fingers are trying to create, and you've got it circled at all times, but you never can find dead center.
Yeah.
And so what would I do if I found it? Stop,
record it.
Yeah. And so it's a constant. Well, to put it in light terms, it's a hobby. But so was this band. Being in a band was a hobby that turned into a community of friends that turned into a career that turned into a lifetime. So all of these things are just part of the journey.
Cool. I love the answer. Final question for you, my friend, and that's this. I know you've probably been asked some variation of it, and if I interview you several more times, I might ask you this question every other time, but it's not meant to be macabre in any way, just I guess, kind of gauges your reflection on life at this point. So when you step off of the tour bus of life up at the great gig in the sky, to borrow from Pink Floyd, how do you want to be remembered, and what do you hope your legacy is?
My legacy, I was shown in one night in an AA meeting, in what was called a candlelight meeting. I was struggling, and a kid was in there. His mom was in an Al-Anon meeting next door. He didn't have a problem, but he was wanting to get away. Just he didn't want to sit through the meeting. And so you're sitting there in the dark with one candle in the room, and he shared with this small group, about 6 of us. He said, I'm not an alcoholic. My mom's in an Al-Anon meeting, but let me tell you my story. My father was a drunk. He was terrible to my mother, etc. Life was hell. He started going to meetings, and he changed. And by the time he had died, he had sponsored dozens and dozens of people, changed their lives, and completely changed his life and all that. When my dad died, he went out a winner. And in that moment, the light bulb above my head lit, and that was going to be my legacy. And it's personal. I'm going to get a winner for my bandmates, for my friends, most importantly for my family, and for my legacy. I'm going out a winner. I'm not going to be someone. It's like, oh, he fell into the regular traps of rock and roll and money and sex, rock and roll and drugs and all that crap. And no surprise he's dead. No, I'm going out a winner. And that's my legacy.
Good deal. I love that. That is phenomenal. So, well, Rich, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. And again, thank you for all the years of phenomenal music. And I'm looking forward to more phenomenal music. I plan on catching your show in Knoxville next year. So hopefully I can see you then. If I can get backstage and just bump elbows with you real quick, I'd be even more thrilled. But we'll see how things look at that time. And but you stay healthy. I hope the band stays healthy. And hopefully I can talk to you again down the road when that new album comes out. Okay.
I do too. Hopefully I'll see you there.
All right. Take care, Rich. Stay
Great.
safe.
Thanks
And
for your time.
all right. Take care. Bye-bye.